This is the War Room Roundtable podcast, the show that takes you around the world to share interviews with some of the most successful and relevant businessmen and women on the planet. Hear their stories and get the most important business lessons they've learned on the road to success, and get exclusive advice on how to implement their successes into your life and business. The War Room Roundtable is brought to you by your hosts, Jason Miller, CEO of Strategic Advisor Board, and Phillip Lanos, CEO of Own the Rhythm, and former podcast host for Entrepreneur and Inc. magazine. Welcome to the War Room. Scott, it's a pleasure to have you here. How you doing?
Thank you. I'm doing well. I appreciate having me.
Yeah, man. From my notes, what I have here is, we're going to have a traditional question, but I just want to lay the groundwork and say, the CEO of SmashBurger. Ooh, that's awesome, man. For me, I mean, I'm a foodie, so this is a big deal to me. But that said, the way we start things off is we ask, do you yourself come from a family of entrepreneurs or working professionals of that degree?
Yeah. So my grandfather on my father's side and my father, they own their own in Iowa. They own their own elevator, like grain elevator. And my dad then bought a division of it from his dad that then fertilized the crops when they were planted. And another brother bought the grain piece of it. So yes. And then my dad, we sold the business, I think in 85 is when I actually moved to Missouri, which started my restaurant business. Because he sold out and went to work for a vegetation control company for the railroad. And so yes, the history's there. My other side of the family were all farmers. My mom's parents and brothers, and they still to this day farm and have, some of them have like 10,000 acres. So yeah, there was really never, my mom worked at a bank, but besides that, there was really never a typical, I got to go to the office, at 8:00 kind of a thing.
How do you feel that shaped your, and by the way, you have a lot in common with Jason in that respect. How do you feel you had that shape your decisions growing up, where most people would say, okay, I got to go to school. I got to get a corporate job. I mean, that was probably not even anywhere on your mind, but I'd love to hear it from you. Like, how did that shape your professional choices growing up?
Sure. So Mike and I, my brother, he was 3 years older than me. He passed away last year, but he and I had a mowing business. So I'm going to say I was 7, 8 years old, and he'd drive the riding mower and I'd sit on the back, pull the push mower, because that's all I could do. I couldn't reach the pedals. And but when we moved to Smithville in Missouri, it's when we first got started in the restaurant business. And I guess my whole life until recently, last several years, but I miss birthdays, I miss holidays, because being in this business, in the food business, you miss all those things, right? And I think that helped ground all of us, and me especially. But I had an itch, I guess, in Iowa. There's 99 counties in Iowa, and everyone by the state constitution has to have a civil engineering degree or civil engineer on staff. So I like math. I'm good at math, and I was blowing through math, and I'm like, well, I'll be a civil engineer. Well, it wasn't until I got kind of in the food business, and I was a manager at 18, a district manager at 20, and then I was like, well, I'm not going to go do that. Waste all that money to make nothing when I can do what I do, I think, fairly well, and surround myself with great people. So that's really what kind of took me out of the traditional. Everybody thought I was going to be the one that, goes to college, gets a master's, and I work with all these Harvard guys and stuff that, have all the MBAs. But I just wasn't at the path for me. And I just grew up, kind of with the old bootstraps, if you will. Since I was 11 years old, I started washing dishes, and I'm 48 today, I guess. So,
wow,
that's a nickel tour there.
Yeah. No, I love that though, especially the details about not only how far back your spirit was ready to get to work, right? And I'm not surprised, because based on what I've learned from even Jason here, just growing up, it being on a farm, the kind of work ethic that comes from that origin in life, and it's unavoidable. So it's really fun to hear that, and then to see that you had taken the time to learn what businesses are required to have on staff, and you're like, well, I could go that route since I'm good at that, only to find, yeah, but I'm also not only good at that, which is where entrepreneurs really start to flourish, when they start coming into themselves and realizing I'm good at a lot of things. So how do I maximize my potential and my prospects,
Sure.
and make it better, right? So I love hearing sort of these qualities that you're bringing up, and how they're beginning to connect to where you are today. And before we go there, I want to turn it over to Jason, since there's so much in common in your origins, in terms of growing up, and then, both of you being in business now. While he had a military career, that's another aspect of his own life. But I'd love to hear his reflections on sort of some of the things you were saying. I'm sure there's a couple of things he wants to talk about there.
Sure.
Well, the beauty behind it is you don't get to rush anything on a farm, right? It's going to take its natural time. You don't get to shove a seed in the ground and go, you better grow by tomorrow, right? I mean, it doesn't work that way. Right. And if people, and I'm sure you've probably seen this over years of mentoring CEOs too, since in your own career, is that a lot of people think this stuff can just come so quickly, right? And you got to plant the seed. You have to, there's care and feeding involved in business, right? And it's not this, plant and it goes type of thing. And that's why I love using the farm example. I mean, I grew up on a farm, and my parents both very entrepreneurial, and I took a lot from that. I didn't understand for years until years later. Every morning my dad would make me go shovel. It seemed like a ton of grain. It probably actually wasn't, but it seemed like that at age 9.
Right.
And he'd hand me a scoop shovel, and he'd be a shovel all out in the bunks, right?
Yeah.
Meanwhile, there is a farmhand right there that could just be done like that, right? But the lessons from all those things, I think, take people like you and I, and then we get in the positions where we can impact the world a little bit, right? And you can leave quite a good little footprint in people's minds just with a story like that, right?
Certainly, yeah.
And it's amazing how a lot of business owners come from very high performance growing up, right? And there was no givens. You had to work for everything.
Mm-hmm.
there was no, well, hey, I want that new pair of shoes. Great, go figure out how to buy them.
Right, exactly.
So there's some really interesting things in there, and it doesn't surprise me you took all that and rolled it up into quite an illustrious career in the restaurant business, which is, I know how you and Mike Owens, that's how you guys know each other. And
yeah. Oh, Mike Owens, he was, told you, he was a groomsman at my wedding.
Yeah.
Wow.
A failed wedding. So I think if he was the bad apple or it was me, but I'm sure it was more me. But yeah, so I've known Mike. I started working for Mike when I was, I think, 19, maybe 20. And then, so now, talking 30 years later, we've friends and in my wedding. And so, yeah, he's a good guy.
Yeah.
Wow.
For sure. It's amazing how successful people just revolve around each other, right?
Yeah. He was my GM. I was an assistant, and we'd take the walk around the parking lot, and he'd tell me the way of the world. And then, over time things change, and, I just went on to different things, and he did as well. And it worked out well for everybody, it seems like.
Yeah.
Man. See, that's cool. I think there's a valuable opportunity here in terms of having a conversation about mentorship, because you know, even just running a restaurant, right? Having the right leaders in place to help get the team where they need to be in general is one form of mentorship, right? Because I think restaurant businesses, and I don't know much about them, right? So I'm speaking out of depth here, so I'd love for you to correct me. It's the kind of business where leadership really does matter. It's probably the most important type of business, because there's a lot of fast pace and quality control that needs to happen all at the same time, and the deliverable is almost immediate, as opposed to sort of throwing up an ad campaign and waiting a couple of weeks to see what the results and the data looks like. You got the data right away. It's almost as tough as stand-up comedy in a sense, where you know if it's working almost right away. Only to add to it the fact that restaurants, as far as a business goes, can be very difficult to actually make a profit in. So I'd love to hear sort of your thoughts on mentorship, the nature of the food business, and so on and so forth.
Sure. Great comments. Certainly things have changed so much in the last couple of years, and quite frankly, guys, knock on wood, thank my lucky stars, I was not running anything daily when the pandemic hit, because now I'm on boards of companies that are active, but just to listen to the stories of, man, you got to take every temperature and every 4 hours, and only 8 people could be in the line. I mean, it was hard for me to I'm glad I didn't deal with it, but hard for me to actually wrap my head around what a pain in the ass that is. So I think, but I will tell you, and this is the Swenson's brand out of Akron, Ohio. I got on the board there 6 years ago. There were 7 stands. There's 18 today. And these are like real drive-ins. Like you drive in, you flash your lights, car hop comes out. And I mean, or you can get it online too, but nonetheless, so just hit a huge boom during the pandemic, even while being short-staffed, even all these other problems. But you got a CEO that was with the company for 18 years as a car hop and a kitchen person, and they made him CEO when they bought the company. And so every other Tuesday, I have a mentor call with him for the last 6 years, beginning to hand off the next tool. Right, start looking at this, and you should start talking about your team with technology. So I think that's been a huge win, but I would also say that the struggle with it is you're trying to mentor someone who means well, brand advocate, in the middle of the worst, firestorm in the food business that I've been in, and I've been doing since I was 11, so 40 years. So that's, I mean, that answers your question necessarily. I'm dealing with a really, unfortunate circumstance on another board where we bought 42 restaurants. Half of them shouldn't have been bought, just poor due diligence. And so we're, thinking about what to do with that. And so those are big decisions, right, for a young company. And the capital company itself is not that young, but this particular brand in the portfolio is. So anyway, it's, you kind of got, from my standpoint, I got kind of from one end to the other. I have zero interest whatsoever anymore. Like I got go run 5,000 Pizza Huts, just not my gig, And so my gig is, looking if I'm going to do something at an investment opportunity, probably smaller, to get it very similar to SmashBurger. I started with SmashBurger with one restaurant, and we sold it with 370 to an Asian group, Jollibee Foods, for 350 million. So that worked out really well. And I was there from day one, literally from day one as the president. So it's more of something like that for me. I just don't, and I think that helps, to circle back to your question, that helps with mentorship, because you got the time to build. I mean, you're talking about wearing 10 hats any given day, and versus it's going into a big company, you got the new CMO coming in. I've kind of lost all passion for that anymore. I used to want to run Yum Foods when I was a kid, but I just don't really want to do that anymore. I like making impact on people's lives, or trying to, I guess.
Yeah, no, it's definitely a different flavor of business when you move into the investment, launching and sort of scaling side of things. It's
Right.
totally different from being the younger guy on the other end of the phone call going, oh, that's a great idea. I don't know why I didn't think of that. Well, that's why I'm your mentor, to tell you things you didn't think about, right? And having
Right.
that dynamic. And then they have their own set of problems, like dealing with the pandemic, and even prior to the pandemic or post-pandemic,
Yeah.
what the world looks like in terms of operations and workplace culture. And can
Right.
they be accommodating while also still being strict and expecting what's absolutely necessary of their team? And the list goes on. So I like that we're able to discuss sort of the different levels that one can expect to travel through as an entrepreneur, because that's the goal, right? If you're not going to be transforming and changing yourself, your businesses, not only yourself, but your businesses will reflect that lack of willingness to change and transform and travel. And it's something that I'm seeing, while I may not be scaling businesses and making investments the way you and Jason are, in terms of that, I'm the guy on the other one. Like, I'm trying to lead something, and I'm having people like Jason, people like you, Scott, tell me, well, have you tried looking at this? It's time you start looking at that. I'm the one there going, oh, okay. So it's really cool to be able to bring those things together and show how important mentorship is at any level. Because I'm willing to bet, Scott, you still have mentors.
Oh yeah, no, there's no doubt, and I talk to them frequently, and it's a $1 million question. What do you want to do? What do you want to do? What do you want to do?
Quite literally a couple millions of dollars in questions, right?
Yeah, and I'm like, I don't know exactly. When I find it, I love being on the boards. I love, I obviously have equity investments there. They've been extremely good. That's allowed me then to get into their next funds. Each of the boards I'm on, their next fund raise. One closed a $380 million fund, and one closed another $250 million fund. So now I'm able to get in that world, and which I've been working on. And ideally, one more board for me probably would be happy. And not saying I would invest in a great company, but that keeps me pretty darn busy with 3 boards, and or 2 boards. So I'm talking to the groups, if they get something down my bailiwick, consumer, food, whatever, just to get on another board. So that was something I'm interested in. Not saying I wouldn't take the right opportunity to invest and start somewhere else, but it's got to be a unique deal for me.
I feel like one of the most valuable things we could get out of this conversation for entrepreneurs, aside from the millions of opportunities we have here, but I think the most obvious one, the one that's really been driving this conversation, is if you had to take a moment to speak to any entrepreneur who's at a level now where they're wondering, what's next? I solved my money problems, right? It is as a person. I've got a great team, but I feel like I need to grow into something, and I don't know what that is, right? We're talking about that entrepreneur, CEO level, looking to do what's next, because they conquered that. In your opinion, based on the fact that you're now sitting on boards and making investments and being part of funds, what is that transition like? And what is like a bottom line? This is what you need to know if you want to grow into something like that.
That's a long question. Good question, but I'll tell you, it's a little uncomfortable right now with the stock market in the toilet. When you're not working and have a daily job. It's been, well, for everyone, but it's been brutal. And I've had a lot of calls about that with me and my guys, but with people that are, what do we do? What do we do? What do I do? And you just got to, keep doing what you do well, keep your eye on the ball. And then, to me, and this is a cliche, but you've got to have good people around you. And I'll give you an example. I'm struggling with this CEO that I deal with, of him not wanting to bring on any COOs, and because he's like, I can handle all this. Well, we're not handling it very well. And I'm telling you, I mean, we're about to close 20 stores, and that's going to be a, firestorm of big proportions. It'll make the news. And so it's how do you teach someone? And that's a really old school idea, though, is
Right.
I want to do it all myself because I don't want anybody around me. Well, the real way to do it is surround yourself by great people. You look even better, right? That's a cliche I was getting at. But so that still seems to be, a major problem. And then I think also it's being open to, which they weren't when I first started there, they opened to new technologies. And what I mean by that was, I'm not kidding you, the kid runs to your car. The kid takes your order, he brings your food out. So now we got online ordering, we've got KBS systems, measuring times. I mean, we're doing all kinds of stuff that you should be doing, but didn't have it to begin with. And then to try and teach someone that had been with the brand for 20 years, like, we're just trying to change my brand. Well, no, I'm kind of wanting to bring it into this generation. And so it started 1934. But so it's, each one's different. I have a buddy who's the CFO at Jack in the Box, and I got him a job there. And he's always looking for the next big deal. Like, I want to be CEO. Well, I want you to want to be a CEO. You need to stick somewhere for like 5 years as a good CFO before you get there. And he just popping jobs. And he's finally, I think, learning I need to hunker down. I need to focus, and I could be a very good CEO. And I think he could be. But you can't go somewhere for 6 months, generally speaking, and just keep hopping and, expect to be the CEO. So that's kind of a spectrum of the stuff I deal with, people, friends, etc. And I don't know if that made any sense, but that's.
Yeah, no, the general sense that I took away from that is, if someone's really looking to grow into a new level of what they're trying to accomplish, or if they think that it's smart to just take on as much as they can on their own, there's a few things they need to keep in mind. Number one, is that really the best use of your talent, your skill, your energy, your vision, your craft, right? As a professional,
Right.
That's one key thing I think that you've highlighted, and to keep in mind. Someone needs to take stock of that and have a hard look, and that's where a good mentor can come in that can be honest with you. I don't know, right? The other is, if you are going to be making a change and a shift over, especially when you're at that level, at that higher level, it's important that you're ready to commit to this next role that you want to step into, regardless of what it looks like, for at least a couple of years. We're talking a handful, like 5 years. And if you're willing to do that, commit to this new role. Like, if you want to go from being a CEO to an investor, and you need to know that there are going to be hard times. There's going to be a lot of money lost, a lot of money made, and you can't let any of those things change the fact that you decided to step into this, if that's what you want to do, right? So it's just like the way you got to become a CEO to begin with. So there's that. And then the other is, are you really going to say that because it's not for everybody, an investor and sitting there on boards and listening to people and doing all, is that really the best use of you? It's like the same can be said of anybody who is a CEO, but really they'd make a better CMO, right? Like, there's a slight difference in skill set and personalities that are necessary. And I think all of that is worth having that conversation about. And that's at least what I took from what you were saying. Is that accurate?
Yeah. And I think you've made a good point with, I love the 2 PE firms that I'm on boards with. And that, I think, is essential. And, I can tell a horror story or two in my past where it wasn't as good. But so that's one of the first things I ask is about the board structure, how it works, who's going to be involved, like what's the feedback mechanisms that we all have, because I want to do something that I enjoy as well. And working with the wrong board or any wrong person is terrible. And I'm, old enough now, I don't have to just do that. But I am very sensitive to that. That's why I would be a CEO for one of the 2 firms that I'm with now, if I could invest in the next concept. And they know that. And so I'm an operating director actually for one of them. And I do some consulting work for them and just look at deals for them to try to help them out with the due diligence. But so, yeah, I think that's accurate. but I also think that because the job market's gone so haywire on every level, that is its whole nother, bailiwick of challenges. The technology, robotic pizza making, kiosk ordering in McDonald's. I mean, hey, you get what you asked for. You don't pay me $15 an hour. There'll be 3 of you instead of 12. I mean, that's just, and common sense doesn't seem to win on any of those fronts anymore. But it's staying ahead of that trend as well. And technology is not going anywhere, obviously. So it's how do you remain relevant? How do you continually evolve to remain relevant? And in doing so, how do you bring the right people and team? Like, listen, I'm not a tech guy. I like tech and I need it all around me, but I'm not a tech guy. So you need like people teams that understand your vision and can execute against that. And so that's a myriad of, I guess, comments to your question. Yeah. And there's no right or wrong answer to anything. It's like people asking me, should you franchise or become all corporate owned? Like there's no right answer there. It's a capital structure issue. It's, resource issue. So again, not saying that that's the right answers. Those are just some answers.
Hey, there are answers from experience, and I really appreciate that. There's very few tidbits left of business to accomplish in this conversation here. The first one being giving a shout out to somebody who even made this conversation with you possible for us to continue the show. And our supporter is this company called Sharing the Credit with Will Black. And essentially what they do is they've taken matters into their own hands to take back the power for businesses that don't even know they can add a little bit of impact to what they do every day already. So as you know, if you own a business, you get a credit card swiped, a fee goes to the bank. Apparently, and this is true legally, thanks to Sharing the Credit, we now know you can actually direct that money to a nonprofit instead of the bank. You can actually do that. But since nobody does it, kind of like with employer benefit plans, right? We'll just get the boilerplate, but then you have no idea how much more you could be doing just as a business, the kind of brand that you could stand behind. So Sharing the Credit could do that for you, and they can help you choose whatever nonprofit you want to send that to and get the structure in place to make that happen. If you're listening and that's a business decision you want to make, visit sharingthecredit.com and let them know the War Room sent you, and they'll give you the red carpet treatment. That being said, and that was for the listeners in general. Now, I also want the listeners to know about what you're doing, Scott, and maybe what they should know about what you're working on right now and where they can connect and stay up to date with all your latest.
So I appreciate the first part. I'm odd, and I'm sure Mike has probably told you, Jason, I when I was younger, I used to go to every conference and have dinners and all the, wine and dine and the table at the club with the bottles on it. I mean, I've gotten kind of past that in my life. So I don't do, Mike is always on me. He's like, you need to network more. Mike, I don't really, but thank you. And he's like, but you could just do so much more. And I just don't really want to do. I'm just not built that way anymore. What I would do is, I would run another company if I thought I had big legs. I get on, whether it's the first turn of equity or maybe the mezz turn, the second turn of equity, something like that's that early on, I would do that. But if not, I just will keep doing what I'm doing. And then maybe, like I said, get on another board and then invest. And, I have monthly calls. We have quarterly meetings. And I have, now that I'm a limited partner in the funds, I got to go to the annual, fund to look at all the companies. So I keep pretty busy, and to get a full-time job, I would have to figure something out, because that's, you do 4 meetings a year in person, 2 companies, call it 3 days with travel, plus the calls, plus the LP meetings. I mean, you're burning up a month or 2 right there, right? And so I would have to make sure I keep that in consideration as well, because these investments have been very, very good. And they're bigger now with the new funds. But so that's kind of where I'm at with life. Yeah, it's funny. I don't talk on the phone very much anymore. I mean, I do all kinds of conference calls and stuff I have to do, but I don't like talking on the phone much anymore. It's weird. It's kind of weird. In fact, another good friend of mine I went to his wedding in Cabo in April. He's like, and he's from Fiji. You've become a hermit. A hermit. And he says, scoff. Where's, scoff, because he talks funny. And I go, I'm not a hermit. I just have chosen to not be in the limelight all the time and do all the cool stuff that people think that they need to do. And some people need to do that to keep their careers going and build their business. I just don't. I'm not in that bucket right at the moment. But I've done it. So it's just weird. I'm just in a different spot in my life.
I think that's great, man. And it just goes to show that you've grown, right? You've been willing to change and evolve. And I think your best work is yet to be done, because now you have a different quality of life that will allow you to hyper focus on the things that actually matter. So if someone does have a company they think would be interesting to you or what have you, is there anywhere they can go, like a website or like LinkedIn or something like that they can connect with you on?
So that's the other thing. I'm terrible at LinkedIn too. I'm not I got like 185 people waiting for my reply. I just try to send people to my direct email. Yeah. That's the best way to get a hold of me. I don't do LinkedIn very much, or very, very rarely, I guess. And I would just contact me directly, but knowing that if it's a decent investment, that I'll bring in a group or two, to look at it as well.
Yeah.
So, and which is important. And if you look on the Gauge Capital website, I'm an operating director there, as I just said. So I do stuff with them, and they're always looking for deals that might fit, my bailiwick, as long as it's their business plan as well. So that's kind of where I think I would end up somewhere. Yeah.
Yeah. So the listener can go to Gauge Capital's website and see if they can break through that barrier and get your attention from there.
There you go.
With that said, I want to check in with Jason. There's really only one last thing, and that's the grand finale we talked about prior. So are we good for that, Jason?
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay. So Scott, for 1 million points on this show today, who would you have loved to have had here as a guest, listening in, maybe even contributing to the conversation, if you had your pick of the litter, and anyone in the world at any point in time, and why them in particular?
Well, this is going to be another cliche, which I'm not a cliche guy, but I would love to sit down and have dinner with Elon Musk.
Yeah.
I mean, just how he has the Boring Company, SpaceX, Tesla, well, now
Twitter,
and how he can, it just, there's a way of thinking that people like him, that I don't think that way. And I just love to pick his brain. Like, how do you lay in bed like, hey, let's just dig a big hole below Las Vegas? I mean, how does that even start? And what do you do with $200 billion besides piss it away on Twitter, I guess? But he is just, he's like an enigma for me. I mean, he's the one I would like to, as a business person. And then I always go to if I ever came up and wanted to pay $1 million, but I'd love to meet Warren Buffett too.
Oh yeah. Solid choices. And knowing what I know about you based on this conversation, it makes a lot of sense. Those are definitely conversations that would be worth the time for where you're at at your point in your career. I think that's excellent. It's tradition around here for Jason to close us out, so I'll let him do that. But I just want to say thank you, man. It's been great getting to know you.
Yep. Thank you as well. Appreciate it. Sorry it took so long.
Well, hey, awesome. Thanks, Scott, for taking the time to be here today. And oddly enough, I still haven't got him to do it yet, but my neighbor, he's one of the ex-CEOs of Oracle.
Okay.
And him and Warren Buffett used to race horses together.
Oh, wow.
And they speak every now and then still. I mean, they're old guys. He's 82. My neighbor's 82 years old.
Right.
And I was like, could you just get him on the phone for a minute? I just want to say hi to him and ask him one question. That's it.
Yeah, exactly. I would love that.
And he's like, no.
Yep. I will ruin our friendship. Yeah. That's
that's all I need is a groupie running around wanting to talk to Warren Buffett.
I think the days are numbered between the two of them. We're still getting
right. Well, eventually, I guess I'll get his phone.
Exactly.
That's what I always tell him. I said, if I come over here and find you dead on the floor, the first thing I'm doing is downloading your contact list.
That's awesome.
He was like you're a prick, man.
That's really cool, though. I like the way you're thinking. Yeah.
But anyway, thanks for taking the time to be here, Scott. Appreciate it. It was a great conversation. Sorry, for whatever reason, my power dipped out there for a minute, but
that's all right. Yeah, I enjoyed it. And holler. Now that I know you, just feel free to reach out to me directly if you need anything, you guys.
Yeah, for sure.
If I can help in any way, if not, I get it. So, and I'll send Mikey a note just saying, hey, I thought it went pretty good.
Yeah.
Yeah, man. There's definitely something. I don't know if you've heard of No Moo Burger, but I know the guy who's setting up the franchises for that, and it's he had started the Five Guys thing out here in California. So I don't know if that's of interest to you, but I know that he personally was talking to me about coming up with like a boilerplate marketing strategy he could take to the team. And if it goes well, that would go well. So I don't know if you're still in the burger area, but this vegan burger is taking LA by storm. So just something you should know about.
Nobu Burger?
No moo, like no cow.
Oh, no moo. I thought it was like no boo. Like
no,
wow.
I wish. No, no moo.
I only do moo.
Yeah.
If it don't moo,
thank God I was gone at Smash before this whole fake meat thing came out. I've never even eaten it. So
yeah, man, I love it. Well, hey man, thanks for stopping by and cheers.
Cheers, brother.
All right, guys. Yep, good talking with you.
Thanks for listening to the War Room Roundtable with your hosts, Jason Miller and Phillip Lanos. Please leave your feedback and visit strategicadvisorboard.com to get the latest and greatest business advisement on the planet. Follow us on social media for updates, and always remember, if you can dream it and believe it, then you can go achieve it. We'll see you in the next episode.